I pleaded with her to allow me to stay the night there so I didn't have to return home because they had my home address.
Just so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Great vibe.
And so over a period of time, I received a number of tickets and had my license suspended. And eventually I got a nice letter from the Department of Transportation, or whoever it is that's over that, the driver's license, saying that I had been declared a habitual violator and my license had been suspended for 5 years. My clients were amused by it. They would send someone to pick me up at the airport and I'd fly in and fly out. To add insult to injury, about 2 weeks before I received this letter declaring me a habitual violator, I bought a 1984 Porsche 911. It was gold, had kind of bronze colored really. It had a spoiler on the back. It was the proper spoiler for the 911 Carrera. This was a car that made you do things that you probably might have been cautious to do under other circumstances. I was driving after my license had been suspended and revoked, and I had gone through 2 lawyers trying to get my license back, unsuccessfully in both cases. And the second lawyer took me aside and told me if I got caught driving, I was going to spend some time in jail, and I shouldn't do it. I was forewarned.
But you also had a Porsche 911.
It's also had a Porsche 911.
Not a good combination.
Yes, and I was driving when I shouldn't have been driving. At the time, I was separated from my first wife and was going to see a lady friend outside of Atlanta, just a little ways, after work. It was about 7 o'clock in the evening, and I was going to see this lady friend driving in very heavy 7 o'clock traffic on 285. I was in the northeast quadrant proceeding south, and I got off and I turned left and began towards a little town called Clarkston, just barely outside the perimeter. And I noticed in my rear view mirror a police car. Now, I'd been driving with traffic. I hadn't been driving excessively, considering the Atlanta traffic, which tends to drive pretty fast. Realizing that I didn't want to continue on into Clarkston, because if I had to elude the policeman, I had no place to go. I turned my turn signal on, stopped until traffic cleared, and turned into an abandoned gas station. And the police car behind me turned in too and turned their lights on. Having been forewarned and not really thinking about it, I just pushed the accelerator to the floor and made a U-turn in the abandoned gas station and a U-turn onto the entrance ramp to I-285. I varied somewhere between 150 miles an hour and 35 alternately, evading traffic and trying to elude the policeman who was proceeding after me. Their lights were on. They were in hot pursuit. By the first exit ramp, I could still see the outline of the police car. By the second exit ramp, which was La Vista Road, I could still see the red lights flashing, but I couldn't see the outline of the police car. And by the third exit, which was Chamblee Tucker Road, I couldn't see the police car, but knew they were back there and knew that they had called ahead. I knew I had to leave that flow of traffic, and so I exited at Chamblee Tucker Road, went west. I had previously had offices at Koger Executive Park just outside of 85 and 285 in the southwest quadrant, so I was familiar with the area. I went on some back streets and parked the car for about 15 or 20 minutes and then proceeded back the way I came down a frontage road that paralleled 285. The next thing that happened was I realized that they were going to report the car stolen, and I had to take some evasive action. At the time, I owned the Atlanta Engineering Company, and they had my license plate number, and they would no doubt be coming to visit. I pulled off once I got back down to North Lake Mall and went into Fresh and Yogurt and got an ice cream and went out and called my friend from Columbia, South Carolina, financial whiz kid, and I said, I'm in a bit of duress here. I've had to elude the police. And he told me that since I hadn't reported the car stolen, and the police were searching for me, no doubt at that point, that I was going to have to come up with some reason why the car was gone. From there, I called one of the employees that I had hired to drive me. He explained to me that I had eluded the police and that was illegal and that I was on my own. I was not happy. I called a lady friend who I was going to visit, and she agreed to come pick me up, which she in fact did, at Fresh and Yogurt, and I left my Porsche there with the keys in the ignition and the doors unlocked. I was going to have to report it stolen. I didn't know the story at the time, but as she proceeded over, which took about 30 minutes, I decided that I needed to report the car stolen. So we went shopping. As she went shopping, I rode with her. And while she was shopping, I came up with the idea of having the security company that operated the Cox building where my business was report the car stolen. There were security offices at both ends of that building. The Cox sisters, Cox building, with the two richest women in Georgia, I think may have been the richest person in Georgia. And if you didn't have a pass, you didn't get in. So I went in, had her park in the drive-through, explained to the security that someone had taken my Porsche. It had Porsche written on the key, and I must have dropped my keys in the parking lot because I no longer had them and the car wasn't there. The security at Cox building did in fact call the police. The police in fact came to my office, which was immediately behind the security desk on the west side, and questioned me. A bit suspiciously, I might add, but nonetheless, having had the Cox security report the car stolen, which was nothing short of brilliant because it brought me just enough credibility after the fact that they didn't arrest me. Not wanting to be arrested and needing an excuse to stay the night with the woman I was going to visit, I pleaded with her to allow me to stay the night there so I didn't have to return home because they had my home address. On the way from where my business venture was to her home, we stopped and returned to the scene of the crime where I had left the car. I became concerned because I have a good bit of presence, and consequently the people in Fresh and Yogurt would probably remember me. And the second thing that I had done, essentially that were tracks, was that I called this particular individual to come get me. He did not, and if they contacted him, he could be a key witness. Those were both problems. So, I had her park at the other end of the little strip mall where the Fresh and Yogurt was, and there was a little bar called Sazerac's, and there were 7 or 8 cars down there. And I told her that I was going to walk over to my car and drive it to another location, and she was to follow me. If the police, who possibly had my car scouted out and were watching it, came for me, that she was to abandon me and leave me there. I went to the car, the keys were in the ignition, I drove it across the street to the Kroger on North Lake, left the keys in the ignition again. That was a Monday evening. We proceeded to her house. Tuesday night rolled around, no call from the police. My car is left in the parking lot with the door unlocked and the keys in the ignition. Tuesday night rolls around, Wednesday night rolls around, Thursday night rolls around, and I'm worried someone's going to steal my car. I do, however, have insurance, and this could have been a serious crime. I didn't know. Certainly was one that I was trying to avoid. And so Friday morning I called the police, the DeKalb County Police, and I told them that one of my employees had spotted my car at the Kroger on La Vista. My employee had been at the LDI printing on Montreal Street. The police told me to go and identify it and to call me after I had done so. I got 2 employees, one to drive the 2 of us over and one to drive my car back, which I was not supposed to have been driving. We got there. We drove around the parking lot 3 times and the car was gone. This is a Friday about 10:30 or 11 in the morning. I go back to work, a little disillusioned, but still, it's better than jail time. And I do have insurance. So Saturday, I wait for the police to come, nobody comes. Sunday, I wait for the police, nobody comes. Monday morning, I receive a call from the police at my work, and they inform me they have found my car, and it is at a towing company, and I must pay the $75 towing fee to get my car back. I retrieved my car and never heard from the police again. Just as a matter of information, it is past the statute of limitation. It was an incredible experience driving in heavy traffic in Atlanta at literally 150 miles an hour. Would I do it again? I'm never quite sure. I would certainly try and avoid it.